was the largest living thing on the planet and also the tallest tree. Well, with the General Sherman, it is 379 feet tall. Or sorry, 275 feet tall. With this tree, though, the tallest tree is Hyperion, which is 100 feet taller at 379.1 feet. 100 feet taller than the General Sherman. Now, that tree, though, is much, much skinnier. Therefore, it does not have as much mass. This tree is 52,000 cubic feet in volume, 1,385 tons, and that's only counting in the trunk, not any of the branches of the General Sherman. Now, largest branch right above our heads is 6.5 feet in diameter and 140 feet in length. Just a branch. That branch, though, is larger than any mature tree east of the Mississippi River. Again, just a branch. Great example, 2006, this branch over here fell down. That was a branch, not another tree, just a branch. Now, with the Sherman, with its great volume, all of that comes just from that trunk. Now, with the trunk, going at the tree, 275 feet tall, 36.5 feet in diameter at its base, 103 feet in circumference all the way around. Now, that 36.5 feet, basically, if you parked one of our big shuttle buses in front of it, from the other side, all you can see is the front and rear bumper. 3 lanes of a highway across. It is not even the widest sequoia. The widest sequoia is the bull tree. It is 50 feet in diameter and 113 feet in circumference. Now, that is not even the widest tree. The widest tree is a Montezuma cypress down in Oaxaca, Mexico, that is 115 feet in circumference. So both of those are wider at the base than the Sherman, but that Montezuma cypress is only about 50 feet tall, so it's much, much smaller. And the bull tree tapers much faster. So it gets skinnier as it climbs up the trunk, so therefore it has less volume. Now, with the Sherman, people originally thought it was the largest organism. In reality, it's number 3. The largest organism is up for debate. It's either a fungus up in Oregon that is 13.9 square miles, or it is a grove of quaking aspens in central Utah that is 6.9 square miles. Now, some people argue, well, the fungus is dead in certain parts and regenerated. We don't know how far down it goes. Other people say, well, that grove of quaking aspens is actually cut in half, and half of this is this organism, half is that organism. No matter what, Sherman's number 3, but is the single largest tree by stem. So single stem, Sherman's number 1. Organism number 3. Now, with this tree's age, people thought, oh, okay, originally we got here, it must be 10,000 years old. And we thought it was 5,000 years old. Then it was 3,000. Now today we say it's 2,200 years old. If you think about it, it's actually gotten younger over the years. Now, to find out its age, we've simply gotten better at taking measurements. Now, you realize I just said 2,200. I didn't say 2,168. Well, we cannot know the exact age of this tree. To find the age of a living tree, what you do is take a core sample. Basically, you slide in a pipe to the tree, pull it out, count those rings, and push it back in. That works all well and good for trees that are, 2-3 feet in diameter. Not so good for a tree that's 36.5 feet in diameter. For this tree, if we wanted to core sample it, we'd have to have a stick that's about 18 feet long. They do not make coring tools 18 feet long. Instead of being the size of a nice little quarter, it'd be the size of a melon. Now, we really don't feel like removing an 18-foot-long melon from this tree, so we took a core sample from the outside, about 2 feet, then we compared trees of similar size and conditions and came up with 2,200. Now, we might be off by as much as 50 to 100 years, but we'd rather be off by just a tinge than actually cause any damage to the General Sherman tree. Now, people still say 2,200. Well, that's got to be one of the older trees on the planet, right? Not even close. The oldest tree is 4,600 years old, over twice the age of the General Sherman. Now, folks say, okay, well, it's got to be the same size, right? Similar size, right? No. It is a bristlecone pine that's about 3 to 4 feet in diameter and maybe about 40 feet tall, tops. It lives above 9,000 feet north of Death Valley in the White Mountains and has a very, very small growing year. But they can live upwards of 5,000 years. While sequoias will live more, 3,500 is a pretty good old age for a giant sequoia to make it to. Now, starting with its age, if you could only imagine being here 2,200 years ago, we'd be in the middle of a fire. Now, when I say fire, most people say, whoa, whoa, put the brakes on, stop, time out. A fire is a bad thing. How could a tree come to life in a fire? Well, what we found was that our natural fire cycle in this area is every 10 to 15 years in which a fire will occur. Now, those fires occur through lightning strikes. So, in the Sierra, we have a very high amount of lightning strikes from dry lightning. Now, that's a thunderstorm that has no moisture, so it produces lightning strikes without rain. So let's say a sugar pine like this big old tree with a fork in it gets struck by lightning. It falls down and it starts a ground fire. That ground fire then begins to accumulate fuel and burn its way throughout the forest. So the first thing that burns is the duff layer, all the pine needles and sticks that you see on top of the soil. That increases the temperature of the fire, then it starts taking out dead down logs. Increases more and starts going after the smaller trees. So the fir trees, the sugar pines, younger sequoias that don't have fire protection are consumed. Eventually that fire makes its way up to the base of a sequoia like the Sherman. Now, the bark, the nice red color you see in that bark is from tannin, or tannic acid. Acts as a natural insecticide, keeps all the insects and fungus from being able to attack these trees, allowing them to live several thousand years without any trouble from termites. The bark is anywhere from 1 to 2 feet thick at the base, sometimes upwards of 3 feet thick. Now, fire comes along and hits that base. The fire can last from several minutes to several hours. It all depends on how much dead down fuel is at the base of that tree. When it burns itself out, it doesn't hold a flame. Do me a favor, touch that side. You feel anything? Think of insulation in a house. As fire burns on the outside, heat is not being conducted to the inside. Acts as little air pockets inside, restricting the flow of that heat. Now, to that end, natural fire cycle, 10 to 15 years. A tree of the age of the Sherman, 2,200, has seen over 120 to 150 fires in the course of its lifetime so far. But it's still here. You will notice that it is a black mark now. We call this a fire scar. Every mature sequoia has fire scars. It's a natural process, and it's something you cannot escape from. Now, bark's still here. Trees are still here. However, during that fire, heat will rise up the tree and start to bake those cones up in the top of the branches. Now, when most folks come to the park, they say, yeah, you know what, we saw some sequoia cones. I say, yeah, how big were they? They say, oh, about a foot long, you know? Biggest tree makes the biggest cones. Make sense? Average size cone. However, this egg-shaped size cone, there's about 20,000 in one mature sequoia. They don't get any larger than this because they are waiting for that natural fire cycle. They're trying to hang on, hang on, hang on. Now, with these trees, the cones have been found to stand there for 25 years, waiting for the fire. Again, natural fire process every 10 to 15 years. So they're waiting, 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 trying to release all their seeds at the same moment. Now, with a cone this size, it'll hold about 200 to 300 seeds, all the size of a flake of oatmeal. So the largest tree on the planet comes from nothing larger than the size of a flake of oatmeal. Now, one tree, though, in a single fire can release 1 to 2 million seeds. Those seeds then fall down into bare, nutrient-rich ash soil that's been left after the fire. And usually about 2 to 3 weeks after the fire has gone out. At this point, they have a chance to grow. Because if, say, a squirrel knocks them off and they fall down here, they land that heavy layer of pine needles and sticks, and they're so small they can't push their way down through all the material. The fire, though, cleans everything out and gives them an opportunity to grow. Now, with that fire, it might have also opened up a hole in the canopy by taking out other trees, allowing sunlight to come down, giving them more nutrients. So let's say we have an area about this large. Maybe a couple hundred young sequoias start growing up. Well, 10 to 15 years down the road, another fire comes through, knocks them all down. Okay, 10 to 15 years later after that, another couple hundred sequoias have popped up, fire comes in, knocks them all down. 10 to 15 years later, maybe we have a big snowstorm. Heavy snowstorm knocks over sequoia, crushes all those young trees. Another fire comes through, cleans that up, another 100 young sequoias. And you guessed it, knocks them out too. In the entire life of a giant sequoia, it'll produce 1 to 2 billion seeds, of which 3 to 5 will make maturity. 3 to 5 of 1.2 billion seeds. all because that natural fire process knocks out most of them. So they're trying to release as many seeds as they can at maximum intervals to give it the best opportunity to grow. So any sequoia that you see around here that's mature has had extremely good luck over the course of its lifetime. I always say if they could, I'd tell them to run down and buy lottery tickets because they have some great luck on their side to make it this time. Now, speaking about luck, with sequoias, luckily, we still have about 2/3 of all mature sequoias left. That means about 1/3 of them were logged out. Now, when first Westerners arrived at this area, they looked at these trees and said, wow, that's a lot of lumber. If we cut down these trees, we could make lots and lots of money. If we pretended the General Sherman here had the strongest wood on the planet, you could build about 25 5-bedroom homes from the trunk alone. Now, there's just one tiny little problem. This is the heartwood of a giant sequoia. You feel that for me? Do you feel like building a house with that? If you were to build a home with the heartwood of a giant sequoia, it would collapse under its own weight and pressure. When they cut down these trees, they'd hit the ground and crack open every 10 to 15 feet. Some of the larger trees have been known to hit the ground and shatter into nothing but splinters. Every logging company that went after giant sequoias went bankrupt after 3 to 5 years. Because the only things you can build from giant sequoias are fence post siding and shingles. To cut one down is no easy process. Talking about a week and a half to 2 weeks to just get it on the ground. Then you got to mill it, then get it down valley, and all you're making from it for fence post siding and shingles, there's no profit. So one of the saving graces of these trees is that they are worthless for humans, other than simple enjoyment. Now, with the Park Service, we were created, our park rather, September 25th, 1890. So we've been protecting these trees ever since that time frame. And one of the things we do for the Sherman here is that you do notice we have a fence that goes around the tree. Now most folks say, okay, why can't I walk over that fence and walk up and touch the Sherman? How can my 2 feet hurt something that's 2,200 years old and 52,000 cubic feet in volume? How is that possible? Well, one individual footprint will not do anything. However, if all of our 1.5 million visitors did exactly as you did, climbing over that fence, it would compact the soil and erode away those roots. Now, the roots of the Sherman are very delicate. Most folks say, well, wait a minute, this tree is 275 feet tall. Those roots have to go down, what, 100 feet? Right? Makes sense? 3 to 5 feet. 3 to 5 feet down are all the roots of the General Sherman go. And if all of our visitors walked up, compacted those roots, it would expose the roots and kill them, and the tree would lose its balance and fall over in about 2 years from being literally loved to death. So that's why we put the fence here around the Sherman, to protect this tree for future generations to enjoy. Now, with our park, we did talk about how fire process allows for these sequoias to regenerate. To that end, we do allow natural fires to burn in our park, and we do our own controlled burns. However, you will not ever see a controlled burn around the Sherman here. It's all that kind of silly if you said, hey, I'm here to see the General Sherman tree, and I said, ooh, let me tell you a funny story about a fire we had last week. Not going to happen. This tree is of significance, so it'll be set aside in its present condition for everyone to enjoy. To that end, without any more fires, the current fire scars this tree has will eventually heal themselves back around and close. And it will continue to grow out, 1/25th of an inch of a year, every year onwards. Now this process will continue until it gets so wide that it will break itself down and fall over when it gets too weak. Don't worry though, that's probably another 3,000 years away. So if you're still around in 3,000 years, I highly recommend it. Come back here, check on the General Sherman, and see how it's doing. So I'd like to thank you folks for coming out. If you have more questions, I'll be here. Thank you.